Hi, I'm Brent South. I'm the Chief Appraiser for Hunt County Appraisal District. By now, all Hunt County property owners should have received your 2019 Notice of Appraised Value for property that you own here in Hunt County. I want to take some time this morning to talk to you about those appraisal notices, what they mean to you as a property owner, and what your rights and remedies are regarding those appraisal notices. But before we get into that, I want to take a few minutes to talk about the appraisal district and hopefully answer some basic questions about who we are, what we do and what we don't do, why we do it, and how we do it. So first, let's talk about the appraisal district and who we are. The appraisal district was established by the Texas legislature back in 1979. We are a political subdivision of the state of Texas. We are not employees of the county. We're not employees of the city, the school district, or any of the other 34 taxing units that we do appraisals for. We're an independent body, as I mentioned, created by the legislature. And prior to 1979 and the Pevedo Act, property owners who were dissatisfied with their appraisals would have to go to each of the individual taxing units that levied a tax on their property and go before their equalization board. So it was very time-consuming and a very cumbersome, frustrating process for property owners. So the legislature created a centralized appraisal district for each county in the state of Texas, and that's where we come in. We, as I mentioned earlier, are not part of any of the taxing units. We are separate. There is no political pressure. That was one of the reasons for creating the centralized appraisal district, was to remove the politics out of the appraisal process. What they were finding was you would have constituents, voters in certain districts who may get a better deal at the equalization board because they could actually go out and vote on those elected officials, and industry or commercial property owners who were not voting constituents may not have gotten the same deal. So by centralizing the appraisal process, it takes the politics out of it, and that's what we do, and that's who we are. Some of the things that we do at the appraisal district, our main objective is to appraise property. We're required by state law to appraise property at 100% of market value each and every year. And that's all we focus on, is the appraisal of property. We also administer property tax exemptions, partial exemptions such as the Homestead Exemption, the over 65 exemption, and I would encourage property owners on your primary residence to make sure you have that Homestead Exemption, and if you are age 65 or older, make sure you apply for the over 65 exemption as well. What the Homestead Exemption will do, it will give you a reduction in your taxable value for school purposes of $25,000. And then once you turn age 65, you get an additional $10,000 exemption, and your property taxes are frozen for school purposes that at the amount you pay that year that you turn 65. So if you don't know if you have those exemptions or not, and you think you are eligible for them, please contact our office or go to our website, www.hunt-cad.org, and check and make sure you have all the exemptions that you may qualify for. Some of the things that we don't do at the appraisal district: we don't levy any property tax. We don't set tax rates. We don't set budgets for taxing entities. As a matter of fact, we don't concern ourselves at all with taxes. Our main objective is to appraise property and to administer exemptions. The taxing units themselves, the city, the county, the hospital district, the school districts, those are the ones who set the tax rates. They set their budgets, and they're the ones who actually levy the property tax. We don't collect taxes. The Hunt County Tax Office Assessor Collector collects the taxes for all taxing entities in Hunt County. All we do is simply appraise property, and we try to get it as close to market value as we possibly can. Let's talk a little bit about why we do what we do. As I mentioned earlier, we are a political subdivision of the state of Texas, created by the legislature. We do the appraisal work in accordance with the Texas Constitution and the Property Tax Code. In the Texas Constitution, Section 8, Article 1, or Article 8, Section 1, states that taxation shall be in accordance to value and that taxation shall be equal and uniform. So when we talk about in according to value, there has to be a standard that's put in place for that value, and in the state of Texas that standard is market value. So when we talk about market value, we mean what would your property sell for on the open market as of January 1 of the given tax year. We talk about willing buyers and willing sellers. The appraisal district does not set the value of your property. We simply report the value based on what's happening in the real estate market that year. When we talk about equal and uniform, again, I go back to that standard of market value. So if we have one property or one category of property that is being appraised and assessed at 100% of market value, and we have another category that's being appraised at a lower amount, say 70% of market value, then we have a shift in the property tax burden. Those that are at 100% are going to be paying a greater portion of the overall property tax burden than those that are at 70%. So we have to make sure that our appraisals are equal and uniform across the board. Everyone is at 100% of market value, so everyone pays only their fair share of the property tax burden. Again, we don't concern ourselves with how much taxes you pay. All we are worried about is the appraisal of your property at market value. We do have some oversight by the state comptroller's office. Once every 2 years they come in and do a complete audit on the appraisal district to make sure we're following acceptable appraisal methods and techniques and that we are following state law and appraising property according to the Texas Property Tax Code. Every other year there's also what's called the property value study, which is conducted by the comptroller's office, and they will come in and take a random sample of properties in Hunt County, and they will look at the actual sale price of those properties compared to what the appraisal district has on the appraisal roll to ensure that we are appraising at market value. And if they find that our appraisals are not at market value, it affects the amount of state funding for our local school districts. There are 17 school districts that fall into the boundaries of Hunt County. Some of them are overlapping into other counties, but overall there are 17 school districts that we do appraisal work for. And if we don't do our job properly and the state determines that we are below market value, they can withhold state funding for public education to those school districts. So we have a duty and a responsibility to make sure we have those appraisals at market value or as close to there as possible. The reason that we do the appraisal work the way we do is because of the laws that are in place in the state of Texas. We don't have any political pressure from any of our taxing units. Not once have I ever had a mayor or a county commissioner or a superintendent come to me and tell me they need us to raise values so they can generate more revenue. That does not happen, and if it did happen, I would have to inform that individual that we can't do that. Our job is to appraise based on what the market indicates. So let's talk a little bit about how we do our appraisal work. We fall under the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practices Standard 6, and that's mass appraisal. So we're different from the independent fee appraisal that you get when you go buy a home. If you go to purchase a home and you take a mortgage out on that property, they're going to require a fee appraisal be done so that they can ensure that the value that they're lending to you, the asset, is actually worth that amount. That fee appraiser is going to do a thorough inspection inside and out of the property and report what the value is. The typical fee appraisal right now would run about $350 to $400. There's roughly 70,000 pieces of property in Hunt County, so if we had to do an independent fee appraisal every year, our budget would be well over $20 million. So we do mass appraisal. We operate with a budget of $2.6 million, and we do reappraise all 70,000 parcels each and every year to keep up with the market. We have a staff of about 22 employees, and we're very efficient at what we do, and we think that we do a good job with the resources that we have. One of the difficulties we have in the state of Texas is we are still one of a handful of states that are a non-sales price disclosure state, meaning if you buy or sell a piece of property in the state of Texas, you are not required to report that sale price to the government. The basis of a good appraisal is looking at properties that have sold and what the sale price was and comparing it to the subject property. So a lot of times we're working with one arm tied behind our back because we don't have all the information we need to do the appraisal work. But we do get information through buyer and seller letters, third-party vendors, and we can do a really good job of gathering that data and making sure our appraisals are as accurate as possible. But the first step in the appraisal process, we go out and our appraisers do field work to collect data on each and every property. And you'll see typically in the fall and spring of each year, you'll see our appraisers out in the neighborhoods looking at properties, and we're collecting data on the size of the home, the condition of the home, the age, any amenities such as swimming pools or outbuildings or additional garages, things of that nature. And we will build cost tables based on what the replacement cost new of certain types of structures would be. We contact local builders. We use a nationally recognized service to help us get that cost information, and we build those models. And every home in Hunt County is put on a cost schedule. Once we get those homes put on the cost schedule and we have all the information such as the characteristics of the property and all of the amenities in the records, we then go out and we look at market areas. We try to delineate the county based on the different market areas that we find. For example, you can have two homes that are exactly the same. They were built by the same builder, built the same year, the same floor plan, and one home could be on the west side of the county and one home could be on the east side of the county. And even though they're identical, they're going to have two different values because of their location. So we delineate those market areas. We do the sales analysis. We look at sales of other like homes in those market areas to compare to our models that we've developed, and we make adjustments based on location. And so just because you know someone has a home that's just like yours, if it's in a different area of the county, it's more than likely going to have a different appraised value. So once we look at the market areas, we put everything on a cost table, then we go back and we test those models and we calibrate the models based on true market value sales. And when we talk about a market value sale, we're talking about an arm's length transaction. That's a sale between a willing buyer and a willing seller. There was no undue pressure on either side. Everyone agreed that that's the fair price of this property. So that's kind of just a 30,000-foot view of how we do the appraisal work. So let's talk a little bit about what we do next. We're required by law to send property owners an appraisal notice if their value has increased by a certain amount. In Hunt County, we have a policy that we want to send every property owner an appraisal notice every single year for full transparency. So every April, you'll receive the appraisal notice from the appraisal district. It'll show you what the value of your property was last year versus the value of the property that we say it is this year on January 1st. And we hear a lot of people talking about percent increase. You know, the property went up 10%, 15%, 20%. And we're not really so concerned with percent increase. The main question that we want to look at is what is the property worth on January 1st of this tax year. And if you get that appraisal notice and you open it and you think that you could sell your property for what we have it on the appraisal roll, then we have a fair appraisal. If you feel like you could not sell your property for what we have it appraised at, then that's when you need to set up an appointment and come talk to us. Those appraisal notices went out on April 15th of this year. I will caution everyone that the deadline for protesting is May 15th, so we're coming up on that pretty quick. If you have not protested and you intend to, I encourage you to go ahead and do so prior to May 15th. Any protests that come in after May 15th, we cannot consider those timely, and by law we cannot take any action on those. So please make sure you do so by May 15th. Once we go through the appeals process, and when you come in to appeal your property, make sure you come in with any evidence that you want to present to our appraiser or to the appraisal review board. We try to get everyone to come in and sit down with one of our appraisers informally prior to going to a formal appraisal review board hearing. And we get the majority of the appeals resolved through that informal process. But it really does help our appraisers if you come with evidence. If you know you have issues with the home, such as foundation problems, roof issues, drainage issues, bring in cost estimates, pictures, make sure the pictures are dated so we can know when those pictures were taken. If you think that we just have it overappraised based on recent sales in your neighborhood, try to bring in sales comps that we can use and that our appraisers will look at. Any information you can provide will help us make a better determination. And the problem we run into with a mass appraisal system like we have, we only see half of your property, and that's the outside. We have no idea what the condition of your home is on the inside. Our appraisers do not go inside the homes, and so we need your help as a property owner and a homeowner to inform us where we're wrong. And if we're wrong, we want to fix it. At the end of the day, our main objective is to get the value right and make sure everyone is paying equally their fair share of the property tax burden. So come in, talk to one of our appraisers. If you're not satisfied with the meeting that you have with one of our appraisers, you have the right to go before the appraisal review board. The appraisal review board is just a panel of citizens. They're not employees of the appraisal district. They're not part of the appraisal district. They're similar to a jury. When you go into an appraisal review board hearing, you're going to be given the opportunity to present your evidence, and the appraisal district is going to present our evidence, and the appraisal review board panel will listen to both sides, and whoever has the best evidence, they're going to go in that direction. So it's very similar to a jury in a courtroom trial. So we encourage you to take full advantage of that process. If you think that our appraisals are inaccurate, that is your right as a property owner to do so, and we want to make sure you understand that and follow through with that. So once we go through all of the appeals process, we certify the appraisal roll and we turn that appraisal roll over to the taxing units. We do have 34 taxing units in Hunt County that levy a property tax. Those are school districts, cities, the county, the hospital district, and we have a couple of special municipal districts, municipal utility districts here in Hunt County. Once those taxing entities receive the certified appraisal roll from the appraisal district, that's when they begin their tax rate adoption process, and that's what we call truth in taxation. There are certain steps that they have to go through before they can adopt a tax rate. The way that the system is designed is if a taxing unit wishes to generate the same amount of revenue that they had in the prior year and the values have increased on the appraisal roll, to produce that same amount of revenue, they can lower their tax rate. So they have a couple of options. If the appraisal roll increases for a given year, they can choose to lower their rate to generate the same amount of revenue, or they can choose to keep their rate the same, and because the appraised values are higher, they will generate additional revenue above and beyond what they had in the previous year. That's not a decision that we make at the appraisal district. Again, once we complete our certified appraisal roll and turn it over to the taxing units, all those decisions are made by the governing bodies of those taxing units. The Commissioner's Court sets the tax rates and the budget for the county, school board trustees for school districts, city council members for cities. We have no involvement in that process. We appraise the property, we turn it over, and they take it from there. And so I would also encourage people to pay attention. They are required to put public notice out in the newspaper and inform property owners what their intentions are as far as their proposed tax rates. Make sure you're aware of that. If you feel like there's going to be an increase in property taxes based on the proposed rate, go down and visit with your city council members, your commissioners, your school board members. Let them know how you feel about that. But our process ends once we certify the appraisal roll. We have no control over the tax rate adoption or the budget process for those taxing units. And so at the end of the day, again, our job is to appraise property. We want to appraise it as close to market value as possible with the information we have available. We rely on property owners. You as a property owner have some responsibility in this, where if we are wrong, you need to come let us know. And I would encourage you to take a look at the records that we have for your property. You can pull it up on our website, or you can come by our office at 4801 King Street. We have a customer service terminal where you can sit down and pull up your property, or you can ask one of our customer service representatives for a copy of your appraisal record card. I would look at that, make sure we have the square footage of your home correct, make sure we have the age, make sure we have the condition. All of those factors factor into the value of your property. So if we have an error, we need to be made aware of it so we can get it corrected, get the value of your property the way it should be, so that you're paying your fair share of the property tax burden. And that's all we want. We want people to pay their fair share, no more, no less. If we have it equal and uniform across the board, then everybody at the end of the day pays the same amount, or not the same amount, but at the same level based on what their property is worth. So once again, let me reiterate the fact that you have the right as a property owner to file that protest. We want people to look at the value and make sure we have it right. And when you file a protest, there's a couple of different options that you have. You can file under market value, meaning we have the value of your property over what it could sell for, or you can file a protest under equal and uniform, meaning you feel like the appraisal of your property is higher than the appraisal of other properties in your area that are of like characteristics. So let's say, for example, you have a home in a neighborhood that's 1,500 square feet. It was built in 1985, and there's 5 other homes just like yours in your neighborhood. And we have your property appraised at $150,000, and those other 5 homes are at $125,000. Then you have a claim for equal and uniform. You can protest on that, and you can use those other 5 homes as comps under an equal and uniform protest to say, look, I've got 5 homes just like mine. You've got them appraised at $125,000. Why is my home appraised at $150,000? And if there's no good reason for it, unless you have some additional amenities or some things that are different from those other homes, then we need to adjust your property value back down to get it equalized with those other 5 homes. But when you're talking about comparable properties, try to make sure they are as comparable as possible. What we'll have to do when we have comps, we make adjustments for differences. So for example, if your home has a swimming pool and the comparable property does not, we'll make an adjustment to the comparable property to make it more similar to yours, to say, okay, if it had a swimming pool, we need to add X amount of dollars to the value of it to make them apples and apples comparisons. So those are your options: market value, equal and uniform. You can protest under both of those. If we've denied an exemption, if you've applied for either a homestead exemption, ag use appraisal, and we've denied that, you can file a protest on that denial. When you come in, you need to prove up your case as to why you should qualify for the exemption or the special use appraisal. The ag use appraisal, a lot of people call that an exemption. It's not really an exemption. It's a special valuation based on the productivity value of the land. There are some requirements. You have to meet some degree of intensity standards for Hunt County to be able to qualify for the ag use appraisal. We have all that information on our website. You can look at our ag use appraisal manual and see what those different degrees of intensity standards are. But if you have rural land in Hunt County and you're running cattle or growing crops or cutting hay off of the property, take a look at that manual, see if you might qualify for that special use appraisal. And so again, I just want to encourage everyone, please take a look at your appraisal notice. Don't throw it in the trash, because a lot of times what we find out, it does state on that appraisal notice, this is not a bill. And when people see it, this is not a bill, they throw it in the trash. And then what happens in October, when the Hunt County Tax Office sends out the actual tax bill, that's when they look at it and they say, well, I need to go protest that. Well, if you come in October to protest your appraisal notice, we're not going to be able to help you. We're going to have to explain to you that the timeline and the deadline has already passed. We can't do anything for you. So we want to avoid that. Just make sure you look at it, get in here timely before May 15th. Let's get it resolved, get you taken care of, and you can go on about your business. So again, thank you again for your time. And please, if you have an issue or a question, feel free to contact us. Our phone number is 903-454-3510, or we're located at 4801 King Street here in Greenville, Texas. Thank you very much.
When you pick Juice Internet, you get more. more quality service with free same-day installation. More options for packages, either standalone internet or bundled with cable TV. More hometown pride with employees and decision makers right here in Greenville. More reliability when you need it most. And more convenience with bills rolled in with your other utilities, along with easy drive-through service. Nobody does internet like Juice. So when you're ready for more, you know who to call. Juice Internet. Hometown service. World-class reliability.